Your feeling of joy would have different sensations than my feelings of joy?
Potentially, yeah. So, part and parcel of this framework for thinking about emotions is that we are, to a large extent, actually constructing our own experiences.
I know this is very important, and we're going to have to slow down for this one, because when I was reading through your work, this idea of constructing our emotions is very powerful. So I interrupted you, but do say more about that.
Yeah, so an implication here is that I have a constant flow of sensations that is happening in my body, and there's a constant flow of sensations that are happening in the world around me, and how I'm chunking those into these bite-sized little emotional pieces where I'm saying, in this moment I feel angry, and in this moment I feel sad, and in this moment I feel joyful, and in this moment I feel prideful, or what have you, is really specific to me. There's sort of no fact of the matter that, something in the world has happened that's triggered, my anger circuit. Something in the world has happened that's made me feel unpleasant, and then how I'm making meaning of that unpleasantness is really dictating what I'm feeling. And so we call that the construction of emotion, because emotions aren't reflexive things that are happening to us. They aren't these sort of packages waiting in our brains and bodies to be triggered. They are a product of our own minds and brains and prior experiences.
So I'm going to feed that back to you. So what I hear you saying is, when it comes to emotions, there's no one place in the brain, for example, that contentment may lie. That your mental map of contentment may be different than my mental map, and actually the experience of the sensations of contentment may feel different in your body than my body.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how do we? So we all live in our own little sphere of constructing our own emotions. Well, how can you, as a scientist, then study that if each one is an N of one?
That is the great challenge. Yeah. So some of my research has focused on understanding, where do emotions come from? We have this model that exists to some extent in the science, and it exists in our common sense, that, everybody has the same exact emotions. And it makes sense to assume that that's the case, right? Because then we have some common experience that binds us. It's like saying, is this couch red? I think this couch is red, but maybe your red is blue, right? That's a little bit of a mind-blowing
It is
thought.
It is.
And I think one that, if we spend too much time thinking about it, then we all, have these existential crises, and we can be really frustrated by it. But, the logic is that people assume that we all have these same emotion experiences, and that they should come from certain mechanisms in our bodies and our brains. And so in some of our research, we said, well, let's go looking for those mechanisms, right? Can we find a brain center that is for fear, or a brain center that is for joy or contentment? And it turns out that the state of the science right now suggests the answer is no. There's no single brain region that is doing this function for everyone in the same exact way every single time. And that ends up being really interesting, because it means that there's a ton of variability that is difference in what's going on in your brain when you're experiencing contentment, and my brain when I'm experiencing contentment. And you could say, well, maybe that's something wrong with our measures. And the question is that sort of like a bug, or is that a feature of how the mind works? And my approach is to say, actually, that's a feature of how the mind works. That we are all doing this somewhat differently. There's common experiences for sure, and that's actually where the language comes back in, because the language is helping us to all sort of say, here's this experience that we all think is important, and so we're going to communicate about it. And so everyone sort of develops their own category so that we can at least begin to have some commonality in saying that, again, coming back to the developmental point, when you're raising a child, you're saying, by labeling something as anger or as joy, you're saying, this is a category that's important to our society.